Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on September 13th, and the Park Board Commission will come to order. Mary, will you do a roll call for us, please?
Sure, thank you. Chair, David Downs.
Here.
Vice Chair, Jason Branch.
Here.
Elizabeth Wyving.
Here.
Georgianne Keyport.
Here.
Zach Zaressig.
Here.
Danielle Hai.
Here.
Carly Sitch.
Here.
Michael Hauer.
Here.
Terry Schwerm.
Here.
Rhoda Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. Is there any comments or suggestions or changes that are recommended for the agenda for tonight? All those in favor of adopting, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, say nay.
I was just trying to mix it up.
Agenda is
Following directions.
Agenda is adopted. Visitor presentation. Seeing none, we'll close that item. Approve previous meeting minutes. First one is the Park Commission meeting of July 12th. Any comments or corrections on that?
I appreciate Mary noting that I was 1 minute late for the meeting that one.
That was going to be my comment. Zach was 1 minute late.
It's true, I apologize again for
Right.
being that 1 minute late.
Mark that down.
Yes, that was.
Can we have a motion to, I'm sorry?
I was like, time's just a social construct, so we can strike that 1 minute
I
from
appreciate that, I appreciate that.
the, from the meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion to adopt or approve the Park Commission meetings of July 12th?
I'll motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. The next ones are the City Council and Planning Board meetings. We've got 3 City Council meetings and 1 Planning Commission meeting. Let's take those all as a lump rather than going through each one. Is there any comments that anybody would like to make on any of those minutes? One of the things that I saw in there was the Fireman's Park 2 that's changing and it's going to 4 lots. And apparently that's been approved at this point. So we
Yep,
got-
that's actually going to be going before City Council for final approval, I believe, coming up.
Is that zoning or is there a developer that is buying that land and going forward with it?
A developer, yep, purchased it and is
Okay.
building the four units on it.
And like I think you mentioned last time we were here, Marshall, the park that's associated with the development at Clover Ridge seems to be in the plan, which is good. The top lot, or it's going to be they mentioned it may even be a basketball court that they put in there, but they're going to put in something when they build that apartment complex over there.
Yep.
And that was the only things that I noticed that were of import to Parks and Rec. Any
Were
other-
the wetland impacts kind of like figured out for that apartment complex? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, that was all resolved through planning and City Council through, I believe, a discussion with the variance to get that all figured out, so, yep.
Any other comments for the meeting minutes? Hearing none, we will adopt those minutes. Moving on to action items. 7A, Carver County Southwest Regional Trail Master Plan.
All right, Chair and Commissioners, tonight we have with us Marty Walsh, the Parks and Recreation Director with Carver County, to review with you the Southwest Regional Trail Master Plan that he's looking to get approved by Carver County. But as part of that process, he's meeting with each of the individual cities that this trail navigates through, ultimately looking for a resolution of recommendation from each city before he takes it to the Carver County board. So with that, we have a presentation for him to go through, and then we'll just seek a recommendation in the end, whatever, and then also field any questions you have. But if you recall, he had also joined us at a work session last fall and kind of highlighted the plan. And so tonight is just kind of a little bit more of that formality to go with the process. So with that, I'll go ahead and pull up my screen here. Yeah, if you could go up to the podium, and that way they can hear you.
Yeah, Chair members, Marty Walsh, Carver County Parks and Recreation Director. So great to be here before you to talk about the Southwest Regional Trail. And we'll get into this a little bit, but we're also going to talk about the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail too. So we're going to talk about those two things. So I can kind of see the screen that way. So if I have to look at that, is there another screen here?
We've got one down there.
Oh, and you've got one down in front of here, so great. So I have to turn my head and look at a few things here, you just to understand what I'm doing here. So today's meeting, great. Marshall, we'll move on to the next slide.
All right.
He's not really good at audio visuals.
That's okay. And we can keep this as informal as you like here. And what we're going to talk about next is kind of I'll say the sequence of things that's happened. So when we first started out with the Southwest Regional Trail Master Plan, it was the first county attempt at creating a trail alignment that would ultimately become a regional trail. And so back in about 2006, and this is what the diagram here starts to show, 2006, working with the cities of Chaska and Victoria, trying to make a trail connection between the two, they actually had two different alignments about how that was going to happen. They didn't connect. And so in 2006, we did go through the process and actually got an alignment that we both agreed on. And then subsequently, we've had other projects that have come up. So in 2016, we were working and applying for grants to pave a section of the railroad corridor between essentially County Road 61 and Bluff Creek Drive. So that's to the east of town here a little ways. And so we had federal funds lined up to help us with that project, but we weren't eligible for the regional dollars, so we had to go back through and do another master plan amendment to make sure that we could be eligible for not only the federal funds, but the regional dollars. Then in 2019, and maybe you will recall, so I'm going to take a step back. In 2014, we had that huge rain, and a portion of the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail that was operated by Three Rivers Park District, owned by the Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority, that railroad corridor, even though it was in Carver County, was owned by the Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority, slid down the embankment. So about an 80-foot slide to the bottom, failed. And it took us a long time to figure out how we were going to try to fund that. And eventually, we did find a way to do that. So that started this process that I'm talking to you tonight about, is that we amended at that time the acquisition master plan so we could acquire all 3 miles what was owned by the Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority in Carver County. And then came up with a funding mechanism that I'll say through a series of cooperation with Metropolitan Council, with the Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority agreeing to sell the corridor to us at a greatly reduced price, we were able to come up with dollars to fix that slope failure. So that officially about March of 2020 was open to the public. And today, we're going to talk a little bit more about continuing. So we did the acquisition piece back then, but we really didn't do the development side of that. So we're going to talk more about the development side of the, again, Southwest Regional Trail. And then what has also occurred over this time period is when we started in 2006, we didn't own any of the regional railroad corridor. And so now the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail, if you will, extends all the way from Hopkins to Carver. But back in 2006, we really didn't own any of the railroad corridors. So that's a significant change. So what we are trying to do is break those two things apart here with this plan. So it's a little bit confusing when we call it the Southwest Regional Trail Plan. It does address both trails. So next slide. So again, just talking a little bit about public engagement. The initial plan was more of a formal process with the city of Chaska and Victoria and Carver County and Metropolitan Council. Similar sort of a deal in 2016 when we were trying to I'll say, pave that section, that 1 mile section of trail in Chanhassen. And now today's, Marshall, if you advance, today's this current, when I say current, is really from about 2018 to where we are today, the public engagement process that we began with the acquisition master plan, and then now we're working on the development. So we've been trying to reach some of the, I'll say, the minority communities, so those that are not participating at the same level of population as we would like to see in our parks and so forth. So we've been to Lake Susan Park. We wanted to connect with the Hispanic Baseball League. We've been to Fireman's Park, had to engage people there. Fireman's Park has a great diversity there, as you well know. And so we were there. We were actually doing kind of a special event with log rolling and so forth, and getting some feedback from those folks. We've been down to the downtown Chaska block party, getting feedback. Over to Riverview Terrace, that's our most recent attempt at trying to connect with minority populations over there, explaining the regional trail system to them and how they might be able to use that. And then we're now into this formal process before you. I'll go to Chanhassen, Victoria, our park commission, our county board, and then ultimately onto the Metropolitan Council for approval. So next slide. And if there's any questions on that, let me know. So our primary objectives here are to connect local, regional, state, federal, and lands and trail systems together. Secure trail alignment ahead of, where we don't have the trail alignment set, secure that before development takes place. So as you have development approach you, you've got a plan that says here's where the trail should go. And better defined, as I mentioned, the Southwest Regional Trail and the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail. And then one of the benefits of this is that we create some looping trail systems, both with the regional system and with the state system. So, next slide. So this next slide is the overall area. And so starting at the very top of the diagram in the yellow line is the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail, and that goes back to Hopkins. On the bottom side of that, the blue line is the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail, and that connects back towards Hopkins. And then the idea with the Southwest Regional Trail is to make this connection, or this loop, if you will, between Chaska and Victoria. And that's the dashed and solid red lines that are shown there. And next slide. So, and I don't know how many of you are also aware that on the other side of the river is the Minnesota Valley State Trail. And so what this also does is that if you stay on the Minnesota River Bluffs Trail, the blue line, part of the railroad corridor, get over to 101, and if you've been on 101, you see that they got a nice bridge structure and a nice trail. So you can get from the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail, across the river into Shakopee, follow this, the state trail back towards Chaska, and then get back onto the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail. So it creates another nice loop. So just wanted to share that with you. Next slide. So again, the benefits here with regards to the trails. In Victoria, we ran into some issues there. Development occurred rapidly, and the city wanted to change things, so we are now changing our plan to meet what's happened in their city. So we want to address recent plan development. One of the alignments that we had originally proposed did have, I'll say, some difficulty, still a viable option for us, but it has some steep slopes and probably a larger boardwalk and some added expense, we believe, in that. So one of the reasons why we are changing alignment in Victoria. There's a new park that is along County Road 43 in Victoria, and we would like to improve access to that. We're getting calls from the neighborhood in that area. County Road 43, if you've been up that direction, does not have much for shoulders. And so that's one of the reasons why we are proposing that alignment. And then Marsh Lake Road, I'll show you this in just a minute too. Marsh Lake Road is a much more direct route than our previous route. So next slide. So here, and this may be hard to see, I'm not quite certain if you can see all of it. Again, the yellow line, yellow dash line up on top is what's going to be, and is portions of the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. The green and green dash line was our originally proposed trail alignment going back to 2006. Since that time, there's been a number of changes, development occurred, and for instance, the dash line by Wasserman was meant to be kind of a greenway on the bottom side of the lake. Well, that developed into an entire housing development, and in order for us to get the trail through that area, it would have gone across everyone's driveway, and so that wasn't very desirable from a regional trail perspective. So now we've kind of pushed it off. The red alignment is off to the left-hand side there. It goes on the other side of Cray Lake, and is planned to be as part of the next development. Hopefully Victoria will stick to that, and then we'll have that secured, that trail alignment on that side. Then the red dashed line will also lead us back towards Chaska and the Clover Ridge development. And that bottom piece there is now Marsh Lake Road. So I don't know if there's any questions with that section there, otherwise we'll move on to the next
I have,
slide.
I have a question. So, how much natural area is that part of the trail going through?
That's a great question. So right now, in Victoria, most of this is going to follow either existing roadways or planned future roadways. There's not, it will connect with some of the parks in their local trail system area, but it does get us away from more of a greenway concept to more of what I'll say is the built environment. And that's really what the Southwest Regional Trail is. It's a combination of where we'll have some areas that will be, I'll say, more natural, and some are going to be part of the built environment, part of the roadway system. So good question.
Cool.
So clarify for me if you would. Is it a trail that's parallel to the road, or is it a trail that's part of the road?
Our plan is for it to be detached away from the road, detached away from the road. We may run into some obstacle that brings it up tight to the road, but then we want to pull it back away from the road. And so we haven't got, in some of these areas, we don't have I'll say, the construction design yet for what that'll look like. This is conceptually about where it will go. Yeah.
Marsh Lake Road just got paved like in the last couple of years, didn't it?
Yeah, I believe most of it got paved here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a whole debate in itself about what the county wanted to do there in terms of a larger roadway system, what the community wanted there, which was a narrower
Yeah.
roadway.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Next slide. So again, at the very top here, the red dashed line is the proposed alignment along Marsh Lake Road. You can see we still have showing some of the green and green dashed lines from the previous alignment. The red dashed line ultimately hooks back up to some solid red lines in the Clover Ridge development area. And so that, from the city of Chaska perspective, was the first and primary route that they wanted us to consider, but we are also showing an alternate alignment here in the brown dashed line that would follow our County Road 11 down to County Road 10, and then east along County Road 10 back towards the Clover Ridge. So that alignment is, I guess, something that can be determined here in the future ultimately, but there is a number of, I'll say, built structures in place in the Clover Ridge development. There's some of which are very, I'll say, conducive to a regional trail, some of which are, it got some question like the sidewalks in that area are, in some cases, are right up next to some of the townhomes or multifamily homes there. So that's a question for us to kind of deal with in the future about, okay, which option are we ultimately going to stick with here? There are some advantages and disadvantages to each one of those. Next slide. So here's where, again, things get a little bit confusing because we've stayed pretty consistent with the Southwest Regional Trail as it comes in Chaska. We'll talk more about that. But here, the changes is that we are changing really the alignment to now what's known as the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail in Chaska. So we wanted to move parts of the trail out of the flood areas. We had difficulties with flooding over by Crystal Sugar Factory, and then the 41 Bridge is another area which, if the river is high, the trail goes underwater. So the other part of this is to stay more consistent with the old railroad corridor going through town. And there's a real need for those that are familiar with that corridor and see the number of people that are walking along County Road 61, a real need to improve safety along that corridor. Then it also improves access. So we know, for instance, the folks in the Riverside development and some other areas over that direction, ownership of cars, not everyone has a car. And so some people are walking or biking and so forth, coming back to town. They're trying to get to McDonald's, they're trying to get to the store. So other destinations about downtown they're trying to get to. And then just to be, our plan now is more consistent with the city's vision for trails. So that's some of the reasons why we've changed the alignment here, if you will. So next slide. So this, again, is hard to see, but I don't know if you can point that out by cursor. Yeah, it does here. So this is the Southwest Regional Trail heading back up this direction. And so that didn't change, that's all part of the city's plan. Let's move on to the next slide. And again, here's the Southwest Regional Trail heading back up towards the Clover Ridge development. That's all pretty well said. So Creek Road, and I don't know how much you've talked about this in your park commission meetings, but there's some thought that maybe eventually that gets turned back into a trail, or it's cul-de-sac at both ends, or maybe it's one way. Yet to be determined. So we're still thinking that that's a great corridor. It gets back to the question about trying to be a natural environment. That's a great area. So you got a nice ravine, you've got a creek that's by you there, so that's a great asset to be in that portion of the, have a trail in that portion of the ravine.
Oh, quick question. So just so I'm clear, the dotted lines are, those trails don't exist yet, they're going to be built?
Yeah, those trails do not exist. Those are
Okay.
proposed. The solid actually exists.
It exists,
Yes,
okay.
that's correct. So thank you for asking that.
And then this is just another, so, with that being in natural areas, are there plans to like kind of help to like enhance those natural areas like ecologically?
So that, good
Possibly.
question. Yeah, good
Yeah.
question, because that was one of the things we went back and worked with the city of Chaska on. They identified 2 areas where they'd like to see the potential for either what I'll say is land preservation or other opportunities here. And these might work out as additional trailhead facilities or, for parking and or for kiosk information, maybe a small picnic area, something along those lines. But that was one of the things that Chaska asked us to consider, is to put those in there, because there's some hope that would either, I'll say the homes in that area would potentially either be relocated or the area would be redeveloped into more of this, I'll say, greenway concept. Yeah. So what really changed for our plan is our 2006 plan showed the trail along the Chaska levee. And now we're showing this solid blue line goes back to Carver as part of the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail. The dashed line here is now the future alignment of the trail. Of course, the levee trail stays in place. That's still an option for people to use, but we would look to relocate this along this corridor for the reasons I mentioned earlier.
And that's where the
From a safety
railroad was.
standpoint.
That's part of the railroad corridor. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's owned by the Carver County Regional Rail Authority at this time. And then you can see again some of the construction staking that's going on near 61 right now. So the Chaska has the underpass project plan, get started here soon, and then actual underpass, I think, under construction next summer. And then 2024, 2025, the other portion of the Circle of the Brick Trail, which extends from where the box culvert will end here and then go further to the east back towards the East Creek diversion channel. So that's some of the, I would say the most significant changes what we've done here is turn this alignment, and then these 2 nodes, the potential for these 2 nodes to become something different than what they are today. And then as you follow the blue dash line back, we ultimately get back into the East Creek diversion channel and then up towards Engler Boulevard here, and then onto our existing trail alignment. So next slide. Next slide really just kind of finishes things out. That takes us all the way up from, near what used to be Getney Pickle Factory, I still have that in my mind, all the way back up towards the county line. And again, ultimately, you can get towards Hopkins on that alignment, and in Minneapolis, and if you want to, you can get to Stillwater and places further. Next slide.
Question.
Sure.
Who maintains those trails?
That's a great question, because oftentimes our regional trails are done in partnership with cities as we go through them. Right now, with regards to the section of trail, the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail that we are operating, we maintain that. We maintain the asphalt surface, and we do the routine maintenance on those. Oftentimes when we get in the city, so one of our more recent projects is the up on 41 by Highway 5, by Lifetime Fitness. There was a 2-mile section of trail there that's a part of the Highway 5 Regional Trail Corridor. And with both Chanhassen and the Arboretum, we have agreements in place as to who does the maintenance on that portion of the trail. So oftentimes we get into what I'll say is joint powers agreement with cities and so forth, so we take into what I'll say account, I'll say, some of the efficiencies which might be offered by the city, and some of our ability to, I'll say, use it, tap into some of the regional funding sources.
I have another kind of random question about like the Bluff Trail. So like in Duluth, they also have like, issues with flooding at the St. Louis River. And their Parks Department decided to go with like crushed limestone instead because it's easier to maintain. If there were to be like another flood and it's like really just destroys that pavement, would you go back to pavement, or do you think like going on like doing a different
Which
medium?
area of the trail are you thinking
I'm
about?
just thinking like right along that river, like because if it's going, like it shouldn't.
Along Chaska Creek Road or along going back towards Carver along the river that direction, or?
No, just the Bluff Regional Trail, like right by the Minnesota River.
So right now, where we are, like on the Carver levee, for instance, that is currently above I'll say the high water mark area, but Carver's actually studying about increasing the levee height there.
Yeah.
And I think the trail, if they're going to increase the levee height, the trail will likely stay on top of top of the levee. But you bring it like on the flip side, on the back side towards the Minnesota Valley State Trail, if you'd been on that after it's flooded,
Yes.
there's a lot of silt and so forth on the
Yep.
trail. So there's some advantages and disadvantages of having asphalt. So if you've got it in a floodway, where you've got scouring activity occurring, then you could lift the pavement off, and then maybe are better to look for aggregate surface. On the flip side of that is that, well, you can clean that silt off of the hard surface.
Yeah.
And now you're back on a surface that folks generally enjoy, which is a smooth
Yeah.
surface. So it gets to be kind of a management decision about which direction you want to go.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was just interested.
Another question. Go
sure.
real quick. Is there any consideration for, on some of those trailheads, to do some native planting by seeds? There's lots of trails I go on, and I see a lot of invasive plants and non-natives. And there's certain advantages to doing that for pollinators, and it's just pretty.
Yep.
Is there any talk of spending money on that? That's more of a nice to have.
As a part of this plan is a chapter I didn't talk about, which is there is a section kind of devoted to ecological resources, and it talks about largely some things related to stormwater management and then invasive species and plantings and native plants, things that you might utilize in those corridors. When we have opportunities and we can maintain those areas, we've oftentimes now are looking at rain gardens as an example that become part of the pollinator habitat. So
Another thought is like there's budgeting for like maintaining those areas, because I think a lot of times, I'm a restoration ecologist, so I'm like, so a lot of the times I think that like cities will put in a lot of money and effort on the upfront, and counties, and not be thinking about like maintaining those native areas, because we do have, like, you're on an edge if you have a trail.
Yep.
So I'm just, I don't know.
yeah, no, again, as we look, and oftentimes having the right staff, right equipment and so forth in those positions to help, I'll say, continue those things, because I'll share with my own staff, they like to operate lawnmowers, they're very good at it.
Yes.
But the technical expertise and the time and effort to, I'll say, maintain prairie or other native species, that gets to be a challenge, right? So it's a nice benefit to have, but you've got to have the resources in place to continue with that program. So you make that investment into the rain garden or the native habitat, and then there's an ongoing plan, as you know, to continue that maintenance.
So Carver County will maintain everything that's being proposed to be put up here right now?
So the entire system, so most of again, there's some agreements that we have with Carver right now. The sections that in Chaska, for example, we haven't decided what all that's going to be. I'll say we're at the very beginning of that agreement, what each is going to do. But it'll be a partnership as we go through here.
Brian, John's crew.
I was thinking, I mean,
Just
as
one
we
of
talk
them.
about safety along 61, are there other sections of the Bluff Creek Regional Trail that Carver County pays to have snow removal in the winter? Because that would definitely be a section that should be.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did this year, working with Chaska, Victoria, Waconia, and offered to other cities that we have regional trails in, is that our county parks staff, very small park staff. And so what we've allowed, and now have entered into agreements with Chaska, Carver, and Waconia, is that they will plow and maintain those trail corridors, and then we reimburse them. I think it's $500 per mile seasonally.
Wonderful.
Great questions.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, good to have you back. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
Are we looking for a
Yes.
recommendation at this
Yeah,
point?
so essentially looking for a motion recommending that city council approve a resolution of support for the Southwest Regional Trail Master Plan.
That was very well said. I'm glad you
Yes.
said it rather than me.
Resolution.
Can you write that down, Mary, and
Oh,
so we know what we're
I-
doing?
I was given it.
Oh, okay.
So I motion to recommend Chaska City Council approval of resolution to support Carver County Southwest Regional Trail Master Plan.
I second that motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? Say nay. Hearing none, recommendation approved.
Thank you.
This thing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. This will go to city council on next week's agenda. So, follow up with you. All right. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you. See you at the ribbon cutting.
All right.
16 years in the making, man. Wow.
Yeah, that's a long slog. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah, that's
think
great.
of all the civic leaders and volunteers that have taken over that project along the way.
All right, moving on to the next item. It is Harvest West Neighborhood Park recommendation.
All right. Let me pull up the next presentation here. All right, here we go. So, the Harvest West Neighborhood Park Plan was essentially put together by Public Works staff, Parks and Recreation staff, with input from the residents from that neighborhood, along with assistance we got from HKGI, who are the basically a professional landscape architectural firm that we worked with. So what I'd like to do tonight is just kind of walk you through, provide you some context about the park area, talk a little bit about the engagement we did in the planning process we went through that ultimately led to the preferred concept plan that I'll review with you tonight, and then in the very end, see what questions you have, and ultimately get a recommendation for city council approval of the plan. Not figuring out why my buttons don't work. There we go. Scroll. Okay, so just reviewing the map here so everybody can understand where the park location is. It's depicted there on the left side of the screen in the red circle. So this is a neighborhood park that sits just north of Big Woods Boulevard and to the east of Highway 212. This neighborhood park is guided in our comprehensive 2040 plan as a part of the development in the southwest Chaska area. This slide is depicting the developer's preliminary plat plan. And so this was something we as staff really started from in developing an initial concept plan with HKGI. So this is ultimately what the homeowners in this area should have seen or received as part of moving into this development. And so we wanted to make sure that we were following through kind of on that initial expectation of what they were getting when they bought their home. As you can see, this is a 12-acre parkland site with the more active component of the park area, kind of on that bottom third section. And then, you know, a really awesome nature area on the upper section of the park, which really contains a wetland area along with an oak savanna throughout it. Just to put it in perspective, a lot of our neighborhood parks are generally 1 to 3 acres, so this is a pretty awesome opportunity for the residents in this area to have a 12-acre site for their neighborhood park. So a couple of years ago, there was work done on the park site to do some both wetland and upland restoration. So the wetland area contained on the park site was, we were able to get some grant money, and our Public Works Department, along with our water resource specialist, was able to restore that back to, I think, the 1940s
I think that's
depth of the original wetland area, along with some plantings around it. And then they began some work removing some of the buckthorn throughout the northern section of the park area. In May of this year, we sent out a mailer notifying the residents within a half-mile radius of the park that we were going to start this park planning project. So that half-a-mile radius is depicted on this slide here in that circle. And so that mailing ended up going to approximately 425 households. So that informed them of the first meeting that we held on June 14th. If you recall, I think it was 95 and humid that night, but we still had, I would say, close to 50 people in attendance, which was great. At that meeting, we really just, the intent there was to introduce the project, review a timeline. We did a kind of a site walk of the park and pointed out, you know, where we felt the amenities were going to be placed so they could have some spatial perspective. And then we made them aware of an online survey that we were going to make available to them after that meeting to gather some more feedback and input from them. And then from that meeting, the way we kept that neighborhood informed was we captured their emails for those individuals that attended the meeting. So we had an email list to be able to keep them updated. I believe one individual also put a lot of the information up on their neighborhood Facebook group page for residents in the area to stay informed. We also put information up on a park development web page on our city's website for people to access. And then prior to the second meeting we did another mailer out to those 425 households. So a little bit about this slide, you know, what we shared with the residents there, just to provide some context of kind of the half-a-mile radius is really what our neighborhood parks are intended to serve. And that's kind of a goal in our comprehensive plan, is to try and provide all residents access to a park within about a half a mile. This park site has a lot of great trail connectivity. That would be these white lines. So to the north, we were able to preserve a corridor to the north of that park that ultimately is going to lead to Creek Road, which is that Southwest Regional Trail that Marty was just talking about. Coming down a little bit further, there's the capability to utilize Vista View Drive, and that is ultimately, there's a long-range plan for that Vista View Drive to connect all the way out to Creek Road as well, just north of the current VFW. Residents in that area can also come out of Vista View Drive and come down Savannah Way and then access Big Woods Boulevard. And they can take that trail along Big Woods Boulevard into the downtown Chaska area. And then they're going to have the connectivity coming down, continuing south on Savannah Way to the future community park. That's about a 50 to 60 acre park that we're looking to develop in the near future. So the residents in this area have a lot of great connectivity and a really good neighborhood park slated for their area. All right. So this next slide is showing some of the highlights from the online survey that we provided. We ended up getting 112 household responses. So that's almost a 25% return rate of the 425 that we had kind of invited to be part of the process. And then those 112 households represented 378 people as part of the overall survey results. Approximately 50% of the respondents lived either adjacent to the park or within 1 block, and then another 50% of the respondents lived a block or further away. So good representation there. In terms of ages within the households, there were 38% were less than the age of 18. And then if you add them up, there's about 49% that represent the ages of 18 to 54, and then 15% that would be 55 plus. You know, so overall, I would say, you know, younger families with children predominantly kind of represent that, the neighborhood within that half-a-mile radius. And then down below, it kind of depicts the variety of amenity selections that were made available on the online survey, which you can see there's a pretty equal mix of things. But off to the right there, it depicts the top choices within some of those categories. So paved trails were a top choice, especially ones that go to some overlooks. There was a desire for some signage, directional and kind of pedestrian and bike signage. Signage that would provide some history of the site, along with signage that could showcase some of the plant and animal information and maybe some education around the wetland restoration area. As far as vegetation goes, additional trees and an open play field were the top choices. And then picnic benches and a park shelter and benches kind of throughout the site were a top choice amenity as well. So you'll see how we incorporated these into the overall plan along with the playground area. So this slide's showing, as far as the shelter, some options for a small picnic shelter that could house, you know, a couple of picnic tables and really serve as a gathering area. And as staff, we're thinking about the potential of trying to tie in some of the design elements within the Harvest West neighborhood there, sort of that corrugated steel roof and kind of shed look if we can. We're incorporating some of the permanent bag toss into the site, along with some bike racks near the playground to encourage kids and families to bike to the park and have a spot to park them.
Was that something that the neighbors brought up? Was the bike racks and shelter and?
So that amenity wasn't on the kind of list of choices, but we as staff talked about it as kind of a direction we want to go, especially as we're considering the pedestrian and bicycle master plan to,
Yeah, I think
Start.
it's great. I was just wondering if it was something that you initiated, or it was something the neighbors initiated. Either
Yeah.
way, it's great to have it there.
yep, something we did. So here you can see where the playground containers are going to go. So we're actually going to have 2 playground containers. The one on the left side would be geared towards the 2 to 5-year-old kids, and then right adjacent across the trail there will be the 5 to 12-year-old playground container.
Is there a sign up there that depicts that in some way? Just personal curiosity. Like when you put that adjacent to each other, just separated by a trail, do you put like, this is geared more towards younger kids? We prefer the younger kids play on this, or do you have anything like that up that you would put?
That hasn't really been something we've done.
Just
I mean,
curious.
Typically, the playground manufacturer sometimes has that type of information as you go up to it, but
Yeah.
given the size of it too, it's usually readily apparent.
Sure.
yeah,
I mean,
if
yeah.
you have a rambunctious,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
I'm not worried about me.
4-year-old, the 4-year-old could still, yeah. Yeah,
Just curiosity, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then just coming kind of to the south here of the containers, on the left side of the trail, sort of capturing some of the shade would be where we would put that shelter structure with the picnic tables, and then just across from there is showing where those bag toss
I have a question.
stations along the trail would go.
I've looked at these several times, but now I'm just realizing, have we talked about or taken into consideration some sort of actual physical barrier, be it like the worst shrubs ever or something between the 2 and 5-year-old playground and the stormwater runoff? If I remember correctly, walking around, it gets pretty steep there, and not everybody is as attentive with their small children as we might like. It might be good to discuss on that far left edge, having some sort of really good natural barrier where it's like, clearly, child, you don't want to scramble through here,
Yep.
but
Put some
just a
really
consideration.
good brambles.
Yeah, I mean,
Brambles is
Bicker
what I was
bushes
thinking.
are my
Yep.
favorite.
Whatever it is.
but I just think as we move forward, looking at how close will that actually be? And if it's further than this is visually represented, then maybe it's a non-issue, but just
Yep.
thinking about that.
No, that's a good point, and just kind of a
A sign for, please, children, please stay away.
good detail for us as
Do
we
not
get
go
out in the
further.
field. Yep, yep.
Those are good options for shrubs. I already
2 to
have
5-year-old
like
children,
10
stay away.
Is that Barbary? Hear the screams before they even get
Exactly.
So as far as the playgrounds themselves, the actual equipment, we did do an RFP with 3 different playground manufacturers, and then ultimately recommended Wisconsin and Minnesota Playgrounds, which manufacture game time playground equipment. So they're one of the top playground manufacturer installers in the area. So the next slides will give a depiction.
Before you move, where is it gonna be mowed? Like, is it just in kind of by the square boxes?
So, good
Or is
question.
it the whole?
The green dotted line on the outside edge,
Yeah,
everything within that is intended to be mowed.
okay.
Yep. When I get to the end, it'll kind of have the complete preferred plan with everything
Oh, sorry.
in there. No, that's fine. I realize it's kind of a little bit choppy as I go through some of these sections. So here I just kind of want to show you some of what the playgrounds are actually going to look like. So this is the 2 to 5-year-old container with the playground structure, with some ability to climb and some slides. You got a set of swing sets, and then this play feature here is what's called a sensory cove climber. It's intended for kids that, might just want to relax and hang out, take a little bit of break from the playground area. It's also just a fun fun apparatus to climb on and hang out in. And then this is another view, just another angle of that 2 to 5-year-old container. And
What's the
then
surface material?
the surface will be engineered wood fiber.
Okay.
So basically wood chips, but it goes through a engineering process that rounds off the edges to prevent slivers.
Okay.
Yep.
Same as Fireman's Park, right?
Same as Fireman's, yeah, it's
And
pretty much the standard that
Cortina Woods.
Brian's been putting into all the parks. Yep. And then here's the 5 to 12-year-old container. Great playground with a lot of height, a lot of opportunities to climb. Can run underneath it and have some fun that way.
Some awesome lava monster there.
Yeah, that's a spider climber.
Is there a child depicted on the top of one of the structures there?
Yep.
Okay.
Because that's what they do.
I mean, okay.
Are you
Being
talking right here?
realistic here.
That's actually, it's a seat spinner.
Oh, got it.
Yep, so it's a little further out.
Okay.
Kind of looks.
Okay, I see that.
It's one of those springs things for you?
Yeah.
Those are Liz's favorite, I hear.
That's good feedback.
There's a
for the
distressed parent down below.
Metal
designers.
things.
Looks like he's standing on top of the
Yeah.
roof there.
I mean, look it up there.
So yeah, we took into account the feedback on sort of the moving away from those rockers. So this is more of just a seat spinner.
I can't stand those. It's like a
just for you,
dentist's
Liz.
worst nightmare.
So then just a few more angles. So it's kind of a fun spider climber there. You can see you can climb up on top of it. You can kind of do the monkey bar thing underneath it. So that's fun. And here's that kid that was on the roof. Further
You
out.
made it down, okay.
It's actually
So
Zach.
some fun seat spinning.
Hey, you look familiar.
I thought there was going to be some kind of merry-go-round thing too. Is that not the case in this one?
That's actually East Creek Canyon.
It's what?
East Creek Canyon. The
Yeah,
other.
I know, but I thought
Yep.
that was going to also be in this park equipment as well. Not the case?
No.
No, you just got the six.
Looks like there's room for one, though.
There it is.
And then this view is just showing a nice depiction of, the 5 to 12-year-old area, but you can see the adjacent 2 to 5-year-old zone across the trail there.
Is there, I know that that's not all the detail, but I assume that there's going to be benches around the playground areas too?
Around those containers. So here's the full zoomed out version of the preferred plan. Really, this is showing that phase 1, which is what we're, implementing first, is everything below that white dotted line. And then everything north of there is going to be a phase 2 plan. We'll likely look into that more later next year. But the intent is to continue the paved trail around the perimeter and then look for opportunities for some nature trails throughout that northern section.
And that trail through the north section there would also be part of phase 1 then?
Nope. So the trail would only go up to
Stop at
here
the
where
white
that
dotted
white dotted line
Okay.
is. Yep.
May I ask one more question? I feel like it was addressed, but I cannot remember where we landed. Because we don't offer dog waste stations for other neighborhood parks, that's not going to be available here either, correct?
That's not the plan currently, no. So here's a zoomed-in version of the phase 1. So we got the primary park entrance coming in off of Vista View. And so the intention there will be to plant some more decorative trees to create sort of that alley coming in. This is where we'd locate the park sign coming into the entrance. Paved trail coming around the southern border here. We are gonna, Public Works is gonna, do their best to create a buffer between that paved trail and the homeowner's lot line, and put in native prairie plantings throughout that buffer, just to create some delineation there.
Also, I would probably make the neighbors aware that it does take 3 to 5 years, like with your,
Yeah,
with
that-
yours. So they're not like calling constantly about the weeds.
Yeah, it's gonna look weedy for a couple of years, yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we mentioned that at that last
Yeah.
neighborhood meeting. There's a couple of existing oak trees that will be removed that are depicted in these red circles. One was diseased and one was damaged by lightning. We also have a couple of clusters of ash trees. So the plan there is, we know eventually they're going to get hit by emerald ash borer. So Public Works plan is to plant some trees in front of them and try to get something established, just to create a little bit of a visual, kind of some screening for those residents along this edge. And then eventually there will be the need to take out those ash trees, which ultimately will create a little bit more of an open field play area as well, which will be nice in the end.
The lower southwest corner there where you've got the ornamental trees in there,
Yep, that's
that's
another,
also an access point to the.
another access
the park.
point into the park. Yep.
That's probably the primary access. Oh, no, the other one is.
Yeah.
Just one thing I was going to comment on is the ornamental trees that you have there looks like a real formal entryway into a park that feels more natural, and I'm not sure that it blends as well as you want to. And my only suggestion would maybe be to look at a different style landscaping rather than this kind of formal, like you're going, into a real defined mall area or something with these formal ornamental trees that are flowering in the spring for a short period of time, and look at more maybe, because they're probably the same price, just trees that might tie into the area as kind of a entryway, or if you're going to create an entryway like that, maybe use a different type of shade tree that's going to fit into the area a little bit more.
Well,
You
are
could
those,
also just, I feel like you could do like a tall grass prairie there too, or even a pollinator planting instead, and
It
Well,
would fit in.
yeah, it would fit in then with like how you're doing that backdrop in between the trails
aren't there
anyway.
homes on either side of that thing?
There are.
And isn't that more of a privacy thing than
But if we're doing the
than
same
shade or
thing,
things like that? So
yeah.
if there's a whole bunch of people tromping by your side of your house, in your backyard, would it be better to have something for privacy, or?
I'd look at the
No.
plantings at Fireman's Park in the rain garden, the parking lot. There's a really nice mix. Some of them, like the serviceberry, are beautiful in the spring and the fall. There's some of those river birch, and it's really nice. It just looks like a really nice border, but it looks very naturalized. So if trees for privacy were still, I agree, like if you have a whole bunch of formal-looking crab apple, it might
Yeah.
look a little odd, but I just love the trees
Yeah.
at Fireman's Park and the
That's a good
event center.
suggestion, both of those.
Yeah. Plus, like, I don't feel like ornamental trees really provide that much, because like really, if they're really big trees, you can still see like through, Or like with, at least with, if you do have like kind of a prairie buffer, like you can't, once it's established, like you can't see through for like up to,
Would that be a decision that would be made
Meter.
well after the park is installed?
Yeah, that's my question.
yeah.
Is that a couple of years off, or?
No, it's my next spring, right?
No, it'd probably be in the spring where,
So are there specifics as to what these ornamental trees are? What species?
I don't know exactly what Brian had planned for which species of tree.
The way they're depicted, it looks like flowering crab type things is just how it's depicted here. And I'm sure they haven't really decided on the exact
Oh.
species yet, but I think I trust the staff just to take the message back and, take a look at that and
Yep.
as part of what you're doing, just because I think it might, as Danelle and Carly said, I think it would look better.
Okay.
It could be a berm even as well, because that blocks sound as well, and if you had tall grasses in there, it would block it. I've also seen
really
trees, very large trees, you don't need as many there, but they're actually pruned so that they come over and they create sort of
Like
a
an
tunnel,
arch?
which is really cool, yeah, like an arch. So it just depends on the look you're looking for, there's lots of different things to do. But a berm would be nice too, I think.
You could use sediment that you use creating the playgrounds, I don't know, for the berm. My other, I know I probably comment about this every time I look at this, but the ash tree, like, under it is just buckthorn, and I understand, like, trying to make, like, extra privacy and everything, but, like, it's not doing, like, ecologically, it's not doing our environment any better, and with the emerald ash borer, like, I really struggle with, like, having those trees remaining there. I think I have a hard time, I don't think, like, I understand, like, the human part, but I just really struggle with that because it's like a responsibility.
So you'd like those trees to come down sooner than later?
Yeah, because the emerald ash borer
It's only a
they're
matter of
probably
when.
already infected with emerald ash
It's not
borer,
if, it's when. Yeah.
and you can treat it, but, like, if they're gonna come down, like, treatment's so expensive.
Actually, the treatment, I just had 4
Yeah.
ash trees treated at my house.
How much did it cost you?
It was just under $400. It was like $370 for all of them.
Yeah.
And actually,
And they
you
said,
can do it on your own, it's a lot cheaper.
they said it was like 95% chance that it was gonna save the trees, and they've gotta do 2 applications, one now and one 2 years from now.
Yeah, but are they gonna be here 2 years from now? Is like the,
Yeah, that's
it's
the
like,
question.
that's I don't know, so that's kind of like I know it's like, I understand like the human aspect of it and like trying to create a border, but to me, it's like, there's just junk underneath it, it's just buckthorn, they're already spending so much time trying to, for phase 1 and phase 2, we're just creating more of a seed bank for the buckthorn going on. And we're kind of just creating more emerald ash borer habitat too. So, I don't know, that's just my thought.
Yeah, it's something
Sorry.
that, no, it's good, and it may be something for the Parks and Rec group to consider with Brian about go ahead and getting rid of them at this point and not have to go through the pain later on. And then it certainly would be easier to maintain the land if they weren't there.
Was the idea to hang on to them, was that a request from the residents there? Because, I mean, I'm assuming they know that they have to come out.
I think a lot of residents are really concerned about potential tree loss, and there's a pretty sizable group that just wanted the whole area to remain natural, but that doesn't really accomplish the city's goals for a neighborhood park. So I think this was sort of a compromise, although I would really support, clearing out the buckthorn and some of those sorts of things. And I think the idea was not to do much with the ash trees, but get some other trees started, so that, 3 years from now or 5 years from now, when they do need to come out, because they probably have ash borer, that there would be some new vegetation started that would help kind of screen and replace it, even though it's going to take a little while for that to grow. It's still.
Well, ash aren't native to oak savannas either.
No, and like I say, I think the idea of them coming out makes all the sense in the world. I think they were just trying to buy some time.
Yeah, and I get that. That's why I'm just like, I don't know, just pushing for that to happen.
So, just so I'm clear, Carly, so your concern is that just the ash trees staying there are gonna create, and again, I'm just merely asking. because
Yeah,
I'm
no
glad we
worries.
have you here. Is that promoting an environment for the emerald ash borer to then flourish and
Spread to
potentially?
other trees, yeah.
Yep,
Right,
and
spread to other
that part of
trees. So what you're
Chaska,
saying
yep.
is, why are we gonna allow
Yeah.
that?
Delay the inevitable.
Yeah, exactly, for trees that are already gonna be taken down. Part of like an emerald ash borer, like, like, management plan is like, you do take down ash trees that are kind of too far gone, or, you know, they're not conducive to that ecological environment anyway. Ash trees are actually not, like, they have a conservation value of like 1, so they don't have, like, really bring a lot to like ecological value. And so there's no real ecological reason to be saving the ash trees. I think a lot of times people like see trees and they think like that's how it's supposed to be, but that's not always the case. And then it's just promoting like basically keeping them is just promoting invasive species, because you have the buckthorn underneath there. I saw garlic mustard under there too. So really just keeping them is just promoting invasive species. Yeah, sorry, yeah, this is all about trees. Yep.
It's awesome. I think it's
Well,
great.
and I assume that was expressed to the neighbors who, you know, like, you had mentioned that it was kind of, okay, we want to leave it natural, so we're trying to, you know, keep multiple parties appeased at the same time here.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that it was clear to the people who wanted the trees to say that, you know, they understand. Because the way I was viewing it before Carly brought this up, is that those trees are going to be beautiful, healthy, and happy for a while until the emerald ash borer comes, and then we'll have other trees in front. It sounds like a perfect plan. But now in my head, if I'm hearing that that's going to be a potential breeding ground and could potentially, you know, endanger other species in the area, then, you know, that would completely flip my thoughts on, you know, leaving them versus taking them out right away in phase 1 when we're already in there and doing everything.
I'm not sure it's a breeding ground for other, or potential diseases for other trees.
No, not
I
other
mean,
trees.
yeah,
Other ash
but the
trees.
ash
Other
trees.
ash trees.
Other ash trees, yeah.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. I mean, if we were talking about like a floodplain, it'd be different, but we're not. We're talking about an oak savanna, and ash trees like just don't belong in an oak savanna. And so there's just, in my mind, there's no like real like reason other than the human factor of like creating a border, which we can do with other trees or other shrubs or anything else. So I don't know. That's my passionate.
Okay,
No, I think it's a good point, you know, and I think Terry's correct. I think we were just trying to find that balance of a compromise here. You know, Brian Jung is a certified arborist as
Absolutely.
well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of defaulting to his expertise on what we're recommending here, so.
And he was real clear to the people that asked that, I mean, at the meeting, I know, because I heard him telling people that the long-term plan was for those.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that long-term, but within a few years, those trees would probably be going, so.
yeah, I recall that very well too, that they said they're destined to die, so that they're not gonna be there much longer. So either way, I think, you know, it's not a go, no-go decision on
Yeah.
approving the plan, so. Again, Brian can make up his mind on what he wants to do with that thing, and we'll help him if he wants to go ahead and take them out. We'll help him with the neighborhood and trying to get them to go along with that situation rather than just shoving it down their throats when we said we weren't gonna do it right
Get some
away.
buy-in.
Get a buy-in, yeah.
Marshall, can you remind me on the process then? So if we decide to move forward with approving a preferred plan to be put in front of city council, are we allowed to asterisk with suggestions, or is it truly like all or nothing? And then if we have enough reservations, we'd have to say we don't recommend moving forward the plan, and then we have to rework it and then present a new plan. What's the
Yep.
process there if we have enough reservations? Can we add a little asterisk of, here are some additional thoughts?
Yep, so I think within the recommendation, you could essentially put in some conditions for us to
Well, the other thing
look
is I don't,
into further, or, you know.
I don't think what would be proposed and approved by the city council would get down to that detail. You know, that would be something that would be smaller details on the thing that are important certainly, but something that, you know, is not cast in concrete when they stamp it, you know, and we're gonna go off and do it. There's still decisions to be made along the way.
That's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
assurance I need.
Yep, and we're noting the feedback, and so, my plan will be to go back and talk with Brian so that I
Okay.
can speak to it when it comes before city council next week, and maybe we'll have some more insight into what you're recommending.
You should email Brian. I think that'd be awesome. Be great feedback and insight. We'd probably really enjoy hearing.
Is there anything else, Marshall, or are we?
Yeah, other than that, there's, a couple of overlook areas with seating that we're proposing, kind of on the back edge of the playground area, really capturing some of that shade, overlooking into the wetland area. I know when we presented that to the residents, they were pretty excited about those additional elements into the park. And then you can see some of these white dash marks are where we would place some benches throughout the park for people to relax in. Other than that, I think we've covered everything in the plan. So with that, I'll turn it over for any other further discussion or questions you have, and then this time I put the motion up there for you.
Mr. Chairman? Just, I want to thank Marshall and Mary and Brian and Scott, for their work on this and all the public input. And this is literally in my backyard, and I really think you've done a great job. All the staff has done a great job of getting public input and really taking that input and incorporating a plan that still meets the city's objectives for a neighborhood park, yet tries to respect, I think, some of the concerns of the neighborhood that they've had. And so I would really applaud the staff for your efforts in really trying to work with the community and come up with a plan. So, I want to thank you. And like I said, it's literally my backyard, and I fully support the plan. And if motion's in order, I'd move to recommend that the city council approve the preferred plan for the Harvest West Neighborhood Park with the comments as noted tonight from the commission.
Second, is there any other comments that anybody would like to make before we vote on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, recommendation passes. Thanks. Moving on to the next one, Harvest West Neighborhood Park naming recommendation.
Right.
There was 5 recommendation names on the thing that we received in the packet.
Yep, and I'm going to put them up on a slide for you to be able to reference them. So I'll just set this up for you all to have a discussion on this. So we did make the residents aware at the very first neighborhood meeting that, we would be able to offer them the opportunity to propose a park name, which we then made that mention again at the second neighborhood meeting and referred them to the project website where we had a link to our park naming policy and the proposal form for them to submit, along with sending people an email notice of the opportunity. And so with that, we did receive 2 proposals, along with, there's a proposal in there from a staff perspective as well. And so those names are listed here for your consideration. To avoid any bias, they are listed in alphabetical order for you. But with that, I'll turn it over to you for, further discussion. Feel free to lean on me if you want any feedback, but I'll let you guys
Okay, one
discuss
other
and make
thing that I
recommendations.
think needs to be brought up is when we had the first meeting over in the neighborhood over there with all the neighbors, some 50 of them or whatever it was, there was a suggestion made that they would have the opportunity to name the park, but it was suggested that, you know, the park was already known as Savannah at this point. And I think that's why, one of the main reasons why we didn't get but 2 inputs into this naming thing from the neighborhoods that was other than, that was anything at all, you know. And they consisted, the 2 people that put in the suggestions, that was 4 of the names. So there was only really 2 inputs other than the verbal inputs that we had when we were out there talking to the neighborhood.
What's the second one that was provided by the neighborhood?
Majestic Oaks was one of them.
Okay.
I think Tall Woods, and what was the 4th one?
So one individual proposed Majestic Oaks, and then another individual proposed all the rest of those other than Savannah Park. And then Savannah Park was submitted as a staff recommendation.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think it was something that was discussed with the people out there when we were standing in the park, so it's not it won't be a surprise to them. In fact, I think it would be a surprise to them if it was anything but Savannah Park at this point in time.
I kind of like the Majestic Oaks, but that's also the name of a golf course in the North Metro, so I'm shying away from that and would probably go with the staff recommendation. So, but Majestic Oaks is a really nice feeling park name, but it just, I think it would fit the park, but I can't get past the golf course thing, so.
No, I was like, it's so familiar. I wonder what, oh, that's why.
So is there any other names that anybody would suggest, or is there a clear preference to any one of these, or objections to some of them that?
Well, we could add it and be Oak Savannah Park.
Or Savannah Oaks,
Or Savannah Oaks, yeah.
that would be a possibility too.
That's it.
How many oaks are on this property?
Good question.
Are there lots of them?
Yeah,
You showed 2 that were coming down, but,
particularly in that north section where it's gonna be
oh,
expanded into.
where the trails are.
Back in those.
Okay,
Yeah, and that name would apply to, of course, north and south, the whole
right, the whole park.
thing as well.
Right.
Savannah Oaks?
Or just Savannah.
Or Savannah's fine.
I like the addition of the oaks. It makes it sound a little fancier.
Yeah.
I also agree. I like the addition of oaks. I think of a savanna and I think incorrectly Serengeti. I know that's not correct at all. Sorry.
Going all Lion King on the
Well, we
circuit.
keep talking about like native grasses and stuff.
Is there a motion?
We're doing this now.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Well, do we like,
You
yeah,
need
do we
a
like
mo-
Savannah Oaks or like Oak Savannah better?
I think it's got to be plural. There's many
Yeah.
oaks.
yeah.
Savannah Oaks Park.
As opposed to Savannah Oaks, more sounds a little pressure.
That's true, that's true. Somewhat ambivalent.
This is a lot of pressure.
Yeah, Savannah Oaks.
Yeah.
You're on a roll, so.
No, I'm letting somebody else take this lead.
I think,
I
whoever,
think Savannah Oaks is
yeah,
good.
whoever brought that up, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Motion.
I motion for Savannah, I motion recommending that the city council name Harvest West Neighborhood Park Savannah Oaks Park.
Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, okay.
But
we
all
got-
of our other parks, I feel, are like our Fireman's, Cortina. It's like one word. Are we,
Cortina Woods.
Cortina, okay, all right.
I want a word with
East
whoever
Creek.
named Greek
East
Park.
You're right.
East Creek.
East Creek, okay,
There's a
all
bunch of
right.
them.
I'm sure that was
Stand-
Mr.
Okay, she's like, I don't want to break tradition, okay.
All right.
Motion to have Liz's
Continue,
remarks
Carly.
straight
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Name that recommendation passes.
Oh my gosh.
You'll get your picture taken next to
Great,
it.
thank you.
If they approve it, if they approve it.
And if everybody hates it, we're going to say, she did it.
I second that.
That's fine.
I'll be afraid of a chance.
I like it.
That takes care of the action items. Now we get the introduction to Chris Lindahl.
All right, so here we go.
There you go.
Introduce to you our new marketing manager, Chris Lindahl. Chris with a C. So, Chris is a new direct report of mine and serves as a part of our management team within our Parks and Recreation Department. His role is ultimately backfilling a previous position held by Susan Merrick, who was our software systems supervisor, and she's recently retired. So big kudos to Susan, and we give her, a lot of thanks for the service she provided the city. She served 30 years with the city of Chaska. Started out part-time as a fitness instructor, and then moved into a full-time role as a fitness supervisor. And then back in 2015, she actually helped support the Curling and Event Center with a lot of the, I'd say, software applications needed to get that up and running. She was a big resource for us and led the way in converting our software over to our current software system of ActiveNet, and has done a lot of stuff with like our website and things like that. So she's done a lot of great things and earned a retirement, but then that created this opportunity to backfill her position. And I've decided to move a little bit more into a marketing direction, because Susan did such a fantastic job of really teaching a lot of our staff and managers the ins and outs of our software. So a lot of them are very capable of handling the software. We also have, the support of our own city's IT department, and with our agreement with ActiveNet, we can contact them at any time and issue, a service ticket to get their help. So we're really excited to have Chris on board with us. Chris is a resident of Chaska. He's spent the last 10 years serving in the Navy in a mass communications specialist role, and is currently pursuing his executive MBA through Notre Dame. So with that, I'll let Chris say a few words.
I'm sorry I didn't
Thank
wear
you.
my Michigan State shirt today.
As long as it's not a Marshall shirt, I'm okay. So, yeah, it was a rough weekend for the Irish, following an already rough weekend
I was gonna say, it was 2 in a row.
prior to that. But, we were expected to lose the first one. Don't worry, I'm not getting sued for that, nor is the United States Navy. But that is a real billboard. And we took out 3 billboards. And I think that's actually why I ultimately got hired, was I said, you need someone who can do marketing. Well, I convinced the United States Navy to put my face on a billboard. I can sell stuff. So, no, I'm really happy to be here. I say all the time when people ask what I do, I tell them that I sell and promote fun. So this is a real nice change from the Navy. I mean, I really enjoyed my time out there, and I do recommend it for a lot of, younger people, but I'm not quite in that age bracket anymore. So it's time for me to move on. So that was fun, but this is also obviously a blast. So I'm happy to help with all of the new things that we've got that we're still talking about, the community center, these parks, these, marketing materials. And, if we do have a situation where we're taking down some ash trees, and, hopefully we can have some proper, materials that will explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and things like that. So I'm excited to get involved with that. Side note, I was having a hard time with Savannah Park. And I didn't know what it was, and then you fixed it, so, thank you. I was thinking Georgia the whole time, and I was like, this is just, it doesn't fit. But you fixed it, that's perfect, I love it. So, yeah, and then I guess, I won't take up any more of your time other than to just tell you, a couple of things that we're working on right now. We've been, so I've been here for 2 months, just about 2 months now. And really kind of got my hand in all of the honeypots at this point, but the main priorities that we're working on are website, social media, and then marketing plans and strategies within each of the managers. So now everyone's kind of got their new structure and organization going, and now we're going to kind of dive into a little bit more of a deep dive into the actual numbers and take a look at some of that so that we can make sure that we're offering the right stuff, that we're asking the right questions through surveys and all of that. We've got everything backed up with data. So that's kind of the goal for that portion of it. Website, we've already started a little bit, but we're also kind of pretty heavy into fall registration season. So I'm kind of working on a little bit of the winter portion of it, but not trying to flip that upside down at this point because that needs to work. So that's doing an okay job working, but we know that, Susan did a great job with some of these other websites. The Event Center website is fantastic. The Curling Center website is great. We've got some sort of things that we've got to work on with Civic Plus and the city website, and we're actually having a meeting tomorrow. So, we're engaging with that, but the highest priority now then is Facebook and, well, social media really, Facebook, Instagram. So this is brand new, fresh for everyone. You're the first to know, so don't go tell everyone until we do this. But we are, I believe tomorrow, we're going to flip the switch and rebrand the Community Center Facebook page with its 5,600 followers and brand that as Parks and Rec. So we can still maintain a, also known as, so if somebody goes into Facebook and searches Chaska Community Center, it'll still show up. But we wanted to rebrand as Parks and Rec to give people a more complete resource. Right now, currently, the way that it sits, if you wanted to go on Facebook and message someone about renting McKnight Park, you'd go to the community center. And that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to the new residents that are coming in. So there's a lot of people who've been here for, a long time that know community center houses, all of that. But we wanted to, as we're growing, establish Parks and Rec as the brand. And so we're really kind of leaning into that and having that brand. So at that point, we'll just kind of migrate that, communicate with all of the, appropriate real life in Chaskas and undergrounds and all of those, which of course will be very fun. I think I might just straight up ask Kevin Wright to handle all of that. But yeah, we're looking forward to it, and we've got some good things coming. So
I have a quick question about that, because there was a discussion at the beginning of the Community Center Task Force meeting where we really talked about how in most communities, the community center is very separate from the Parks and Rec department. And so post community center refresh, or however we want to call it, would there then be a separate social media presence created for the new community center? So it seems like it would make the most sense.
So we kind of had that idea, and we kind of did that. We kind of left community center alone, and then we stood up another Parks and Rec side one. It's very new, and it was really just kind of a proof of concept, if you will. But I think that's actually just confusing people too much, to have those two separate things. In this community, there's so much of the community knows that the community center is such a big part of it. The idea for initially separating them was someone wants to message community center to see if they're open on Labor Day. They don't have to go to Parks and Rec. But it's the same address, it's the same website. Ultimately, though, I want to say that Who knows?
Fair enough.
I don't want to set anything in stone, you know, our intention is, you know, this is kind of we're kind of figuring it out. I don't anticipate the community center breaking out, but if there's a need for that, we'll do it. We are planning on maintaining the curling center and the event center as separate. And the reason for that is because their market. And their market, obviously curling center, I mean, they really have an international market, but really a national market. No one's gonna think to come look for Chaska Parks and Rec if they wanna do curling, a curling tournament. But, and then same with the event center, because they're doing, you know, weddings are their big, huge thing. So we kind of wanted to keep them, you know, separated a little bit. So to answer the question to that is, I hope it's gonna work out, but we're open to, if it's not, then we adjust fire again.
Sure,
you
makes
know.
sense.
Yeah,
And even within that, we talked about being a little bit more intentional about sharing things at the curling center and event center into the Park and Rec social media page, because I think what we're trying to get at is to educate the community that overall it's the Parks and Recreation Department, and we have all these fabulous facilities and programs and events that live under that. It's kind of the direction we're going.
yeah, just kind of bring everything housed under sort of one roof, where at least you're with the right department. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm looking forward to working with you on is the naming rights stuff that we've got coming. That is, it's gonna be big. I think it's gonna be really, really good. And if we don't do it really, really well, it's gonna be really bad. We'll have people with pitchforks
extreme.
and torches, you know, so.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I mean, we talk about that constantly. That's October 3rd, correct, is our next big deal. So yeah, Marshall's getting me all read up and all that stuff as well. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, and there's, you know, lots of other stuff that go along with that is gonna be good too.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks for coming tonight. It's nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice to meet y'all. I'm sure I'll see you.
Welcome.
I'll see you soon. And just one time, I'm only doing it once, I'll do.
All right. Next item, Community Center Master Plan.
All right. First, I'll defer to Donnell or Zach. I don't know if you have anything you want to share with the group. I know we haven't really
We didn't have a meeting with them.
met in a while, but I can go ahead and sort of round out where we're at currently.
I don't think we had a meeting since the last park commission meeting. I don't have anything new to add.
So it was 2 months ago?
A couple months ago.
It was, yeah,
It was last month we went on the road trip, right?
correct, yeah.
Yeah, because we have the next meeting we have is coming up in October.
There'll be snacks.
Holy snacks.
It's gonna be a long one.
But I
Yeah.
think but the reason for that though was not for anything other than, it was really time to kind of go get engagement and feedback and gather all that stuff, so that rather than just arbitrarily go through another meeting, it felt like it made sense to not have the meeting last month.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, and we ended up shifting, I would say, maybe the planning timeline and process a tad bit. So at our last Citizen Task Force meeting, we were discussing sort of the next step in conducting a statistically valid survey to the community, you know, to get a better understanding around the programming mix and what people's interests are there. However, to do that was gonna take approximately 3 to 4 months to, you know, develop, execute, and then analyze the data. As we thought about it more, we felt very comfortable with the amount of feedback we had already gotten up to this point, and the variety of feedback, and what I would say the maybe consistency in feedback we're getting at this point. to where we felt that strategically we would be better off moving that statistically valid survey towards the end of the planning process, so we can validate what the, kind of what the process was, what the recommendation that the task force is ultimately going to be bringing forward, along with asking some questions around, you know, the financing strategies that we still need to develop to implement the plan, and seeing what the support is from the community on that. By doing that, it allows us to kind of keep the momentum, and we're still had an online survey available, so we're still collecting some of that feedback, but really allowing the architects to start putting some concept designs together, along with some cost estimates. That is what I would say reflecting the feedback, along with kind of a variety of other things that go into the concepts. You know, things such as what the current market is, what are the other alternative service providers, you know, within a 5-10 mile radius of us. What are the recreation trends? You know, and then kind of just the feasibility of implementing some of the things based on structure. So there's kind of a variety of kind of reasons into what the architects are putting into these concept designs. But that's going to be the next meeting with the Citizen Task Force coming up on Wednesday, October 5th, to basically review those concepts, and along with some cost estimates to go with it, get their feedback on what those look like, and kind of keep moving the design component forward. Trying to think of anything else. The online survey we currently have had up over the last 4 to 6 weeks, we've gotten about 300 more responses, so really good feedback there. I would say probably the areas that are scoring the highest in terms of what people view as the priority would be expanded fitness space, upgrade and expansion of the pool, additional or larger indoor playground space, and then more gym space, basketball court space.
You left out parking.
Well, that's already,
Just assume.
that's sort of assumed.
Okay.
You know, so some of the things we're assuming are accounting for the deferred maintenance,
Yeah.
such as replacing the roof, upgrading the locker rooms, increasing circulation throughout the building, that kind of whole wayfinding component, upgrading the restrooms, and then looking at the parking. So the survey addressed that, you know, that these are things we're planning to do or accounting for in the plan, but outside of that, what do you view as kind of the additional priorities? So.
It's been really interesting, like, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
One of the things that I hadn't really thought about before engaging in this process is they really talked about, like, the consultants and people in the room came out quite a bit about the safety aspect of having one point of entry. It just never occurred to me that you really should just have, this is your one point of entry, and you have to be very deliberate about where you put programming in the building and things like that. And I was just thinking about it, it's our community center, I just go there, I didn't even think of that. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense from a safety standpoint and a programming standpoint. Everybody comes in this one door here, you know, and then you know exactly where you need to go. It's not, oh, I think I go here and stuff. It's just very well laid out and really well thought out, and that's the type of decisions and where the conversations have been at least at the last meeting, we talked a lot about that, but it's really interesting just to hear that perspective.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like having 3 entrances, but I'm like, then again, it doesn't make that much sense, does it?
Well, and then it'll be interesting to have that discussion, because you've got, you know, the lodge on the one end of the building,
Yep.
you know, that's generally bringing in older adults, you know, so they kind of prefer to have that shorter access from the parking lot into their building. So I think that'll be something to weigh in on with the one entry.
Yep, absolutely.
You could sever the connection between the two buildings and really make that a very controlled in between the two as well with cameras. So you maintain that separate entry, but like, you're not getting from the lodge to the main community center without like waving hello.
Yeah,
But
yep.
it'll be interesting to see the recommendations regarding that.
Okay.
One thing that I think what they're trying to accomplish would be figuring out coming in that main entrance and moving our control desk, you know, and essentially situating the building where one way would be all like
You said pay to play.
pay to play sort of feel, and then the other way would be more of that free access, or you're here for a meeting, here to go to the theater, here to go to the lodge, things like that. So,
Anything else? Moving on to pedestrian bicycle master plan.
all right, so work still continues internally on this plan. I just exchanged emails with our consultant yesterday, Antonio. He's actually finalizing some changes to the draft of the plan based on feedback received from staff. He's also had another consulting company, WSB, do a thorough review of the plan, so he's incorporating some of their feedback as well. Nate Cabot, our Community Development Director, is actually going to be working with HKGI, that same company that we used for the park plan, to conduct an audit of our city ordinances. And so as part of that review, he had asked that I share the draft of our pedestrian and bike plan with Hoisington to review, so they can factor that in with any potential ordinance changes. I think that's a good direction. And then I've been working internally with some other departments on developing a trail projects map along with a trail routes map, identifying some of the primary trails in our system that would ultimately receive future wayfinding signage along those trails. So in a way, I sort of feel like we're actually doing some of the work that's being recommended in the plan. But I think it's just a sign of us as staff wanting to sort of put a good product out there for the community to review as part of this overall plan. So I'll just continue to update you as I know more, but just wanted to make you aware that we are continuing to make some progress on this plan.
So I know we had originally talked a long time ago about going for the bicycle-friendly designation, and I feel like that's due in February. We had once talked about meeting that deadline. Any thoughts on continuing to go after that designation? There's just hasn't been the conversation around that lately.
Yep. So my thought on that would be we're going to be better off once we have our master plan approved by city council to be able to situate that in the application. So as soon as we get this pedestrian and bicycle master plan approved by city council, we'd then look at that next available opportunity to apply for that bicycle-friendly designation. And I think they offer it twice a year. I think it's February and June, if I recall,
Yeah.
or something like that. Yep.
Okay,
Still the overall grand plan.
all right.
Yep.
Anything else? Moving on to the next item, Miracle Field and Universal Design Playground.
Yeah, so I know I've alluded to this project, to this group in the past, but just wanted to provide an update, and then I'll also let Georgianne speak on it as well, from her perspective. So the Miracle League baseball field, along with the Universal Design Playground, are being factored in as amenities that will be included in that future Southwest Community Park. And there's really, 4 entities working collaboratively on this, between the city of Chaska, along with the Chaska Rotary is taking the lead on fundraising efforts for the Miracle League field. And then the Miracle League National Association itself. So we actually just officially kind of became official members of the National Miracle League through the application process. So I'll be receiving a manual from them in the mail that's going to provide all of the specifications and the sort of the construction specs and their exclusive vendors for the construction component of the Miracle League field, and receive kind of their assistance throughout that planning process. And then we're working with Flagship Recreation, who they represent Landscape Structures Playground, and they're the exclusive playground provider for the National Miracle League field when it comes to Universal Design Playgrounds. So I'll just go through a few quick slides here to show you a little bit more. So here's an image of what a Miracle League baseball field looks like. So you can see it's smaller in size, and it's got a surfacing, that accommodates kids in wheelchairs or walkers or things like that. And the really neat thing about the Miracle League field is, when they play their games, they rely on the buddy system, for other kids and adults to help them play the game. And oftentimes, communities will partner with their local baseball association to help be those buddies. And it's just another volunteer opportunity for anybody in the community that wants to do that. This slide here shows the kind of the wide variety of different types of disabilities. And as you can see there, when it comes to ADA standards, those standards are primarily looking at orthopedic disabilities, which is really only 1% of the variety of disabilities. So when we talk about a universal playground, it's above and beyond just ADA standards. It's really trying to accommodate play for all the different types of disabilities that exist and provide them an opportunity to have fun and play. And so here you can see a variety of examples of the different types of playground components that accommodate those different disabilities and, quite frankly, are very fun for typical children as well. And then here's an example of a Miracle League field and playground located in Mankato, just so you can kind of get a perspective of how that playground is sitting adjacent to the Miracle League field there. So a while back, we pulled together a variety of community members just to have a visioning meeting and introduce the vision for this. And then from there, we had asked who would be interested in serving on a design team to help design the Universal Design Playground. So Georgianne is sitting on that. We've got a variety of Rotarians that are serving on it. We've also got Vicki Miles, who is a physical therapist with St. Francis, serving on it, along with, what's that? Terry? Yep. Well, Terry was on the visioning group initially, but, and so we had an opportunity to go visit Landscape Structures and did a tour of their facility. And then after, about a week after that, we brought that design team back together. And we had staff from Flagship Recreation, along with 2 playground designers from Landscape Structures, helping to facilitate the meeting, really kind of got a lot of ideas and brainstorms on the table. I think they said they took 2 to 3 pages of notes. But they're ultimately going to go back, take the feedback that the group provided, and start to develop a couple of concepts to bring back to that group, probably in another 6 weeks or so. So we can provide more feedback and keep kind of refining it as we go. So if you want to share what you've learned so far, and
Yeah, a lot. I had never really been involved or known of a miracle field before, and there's a lot of them in the Twin Cities area. And so it's exciting that we're going to have one here too. So there's the miracle field side of it, and then there's the playground side of it. And so, yeah, we did go visit the facility that makes this playground equipment. It was pretty incredible. I mean, it was huge. Several buildings that manufactured the metal parts and bended metal. I mean, it was almost like well, they did welding there. I mean, they did all the work. They painted. They had these huge facilities to basically, as you walk through this facility, pipes and pieces and parts hanging from wire, and they would go through, people would be painting them, and then they'd go through another huge area where they heated it up because the paint on that metal is anodized, or it's on there in such a way that it doesn't, never comes off, it doesn't scratch or anything. So they also made all of the surface materials. So it's I don't recall what there's made out of, but either spongy material or the hard plastic polypropylene.
Yep.
In all colors. They shaped them, they molded. They also, they had a facility that actually could make figures, elephants, tigers. They would actually mold them themselves, and they had these huge molding facilities. So it was pretty impressive. Tucked away in, what city was it in? I can't remember.
Delano.
Delano.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just really fascinating, and all kinds of different skill sets of people working there. So that was fun to see. When we met regarding the design group meeting, that it was now having that in perspective, what did we want it to look like? And so the purpose of the meeting was to talk about themes. What is the essence of Chaska? What theme do we want to portray? And so I think the people in that particular meeting were the right people, better equipped I think, and more passionate than I, in that they were teachers and they were parents who had children affected. They were the people who are in the field in terms of PT. There was a woman who oversaw another miracle field, Excelsior, I think it was,
Yep.
Minnetonka. So lots of experience there, a lot of great ideas, and it was fun to talk about what is Chaska. And so all those ideas were given to that design team. So I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun.
When do they expect to have some preliminary designs back to the Rotary?
I think they were saying about 6 weeks.
Yep.
Just given kind of their schedules and the national conference coming up, things like that, so. I think the prevailing,
Great project for us.
the prevailing themes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the two kind of prevailing themes were to play off of the big woods, and kind of make it more of a nature theme, but maybe animals and things like that. And then I think sort of a play off of the Chaska brick, so if there's elements of the Chaska brick, could be a neat design as part of the overall playground theme. So those were a couple of things they were going to work from.
Yeah, there was, Prairie, we're part of the Prairie here. We are a river town. The silo came up, sort of that Prairie theme. So lots of, I think, really thoughtful, relevant ideas came out of that small group.
Yep.
That's really
And so another thing I'll share that's sort of related from the Chaska Rotary perspective, because ultimately, once we get closer to a design, it's going to give them some visuals and the ability to then go out and start fundraising. But another thought that Rotary has in terms of fundraising is to put on a community event. And so we're looking at partnering with an individual within Rotary who has experience with putting on pond hockey tournaments. And so we're looking at a pond hockey tournament that will be held at Fireman's Park that last weekend in January. This year, it's going to be kind of more of, I would say, an introduction to that event. It's not going to be the full-on kind of adult pond hockey tournament. I think it's going to be more of a youth hockey showcase, but give us the ability to just get a feel for what it's like to put on this type of an event, the type of, the number of volunteers we're going to need, start to build up some of that marketing so that we can really plan more of the full-on event the following year. But our Parks and Recreation Department in the city is really going to sort of take on a lead with that and partner with the Chaska Rotary, knowing that the proceeds of that pond hockey tournament are going to go to support this Miracle League field. So just want to make you aware of that, because you'll probably be seeing some of that coming soon.
Moving on to the next one, sponsorship and naming rights, October 3rd, right?
Right. Yeah, so real quick, when we already kind of talked about it, but more or less a reminder that we have scheduled a joint work session with City Council on Monday, October 3rd. That'll start at 5:45 p.m. before their regular meeting. We'll meet for about an hour. And the staff from Superlative Group will be flying in to meet with us in person, and really just give an overview of the valuation report and their findings. I see it as an opportunity to, ask more questions, get a better understanding, for what the next steps are, and give staff direction on what that's going to look like. So I will plan to email this report out to all of you tomorrow, so you have time to look through it prior to that work session. If you have any initial questions or thoughts, feel free to send those to me ahead of time. If anything, that's probably helpful for me to convey to the Superlative Group staffs so that they can cover it appropriately when we do meet.
What's going to be the result of the working session? Are we going to in fact have a recommendation and the council is going to approve that recommendation at that meeting? Or is this going to be a working session and then we're going to come back and the next park commission meeting will propose a recommendation to the city council?
Good question. So it'll be the latter. So this will really be a discussion, and then it'll then come back to the Park and Rec Commission meeting in October,
Okay.
for more of that formal recommendation for the next steps. Yep,
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Be nice to move that along.
yep.
Moving on to the next item, East Creek Canyon Park.
All right, so those of you that were on the park tour, last month, we stopped at this park. You saw the equipment there, and here's the picture of what it looks like with the equipment out of it. So you can see here, this is the public works staff that decommissioned the playground equipment. They did all the concrete work. They've reseeded, or they've installed all the new irrigation lines in this park and have reseeded it. So they've essentially got everything prepared. We are now waiting on the installers to come in, and we're finding out that we're not exactly sure when that date is going to be. It was already supposed to have been installed, but I think due to a labor challenge, they're not necessarily providing us an exact time frame. But hopefully yet this fall, they'll be here to install it. And then I'll just show you this. Next slide is showcasing what's going to get installed there. So nice size playground. In the back there is that merry-go-round that's getting factored in along with the swing sets.
Now you got me looking for it.
'Cause I think we had initially communicated that this would get installed right around Labor Day, but that's not the case anymore.
Okay. Last item under category 8G is department happenings.
All right, so that's got a few highlights here. If you go over to Lions Park, you will see that the Lions Park shelter has been torn down. So this was part of the capital asset management plan for Brian Jung as one of the projects for this year. So they've decommissioned it, and then work will begin to start building that again, with the anticipation of it being open sometime next spring. And the other exciting thing as part of this project will be the inclusion of the Lion's Head drinking fountain. Park.
I'm so glad we got that recorded.
And thanks to the Chaska Lions, they've committed a pretty significant amount of resources to help fund this park shelter and include the drinking fountain. This coming Friday will be the Latin Music Festival at Fireman's Park. So if you have an opportunity to come on down to that, I highly encourage you. We list it here as a 6 p.m. start. However, we are promoting the fact that there is a community Zumba class that starts at 5:30. And then there's going to be food trucks, music performed by Salsa del Sol, and then there's going to be fireworks as part of this event. That'll take place right around 8:30, followed by music again that'll go up until 10 p.m. So last year was our first year putting on this event. We had a really good response in the first year, so I'm excited to see the response this coming Friday, although the weather's not looking ideal right now, but we'll cross our fingers that changes for Friday. And then lastly, I'd just like to highlight the Courthouse Lake Park Run. This coming Saturday is going to be the 1-year anniversary of putting on that park run event. So as a reminder, that is a free timed 5K that occurs every Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning, right over by the county courthouse there on the trail system. So it's a great event, and I just really thank Missy Goff, our fitness supervisor, for getting this up and running, and all of the volunteers that help put this on every week. So this is a completely volunteer-run program that's really providing a community benefit and highlighting a great section of our trail. So, and it's meant for all abilities, all ages, and all types. If you want to go walk, bring your dog, the whole thing. It's super fun. Everybody encourages each other. So if you get a chance, I would encourage you to go check that out too. And that is all I have for
Thanks, Marshall.
other department updates.
Last item on the agenda is roundtable. Start with Terry.
It's late, I don't have anything.
I'm sorry.
Don't start with an apology, just hit it.
I just had a really, so I got to go, I actually spoke at the Natural Areas Resource Conference that was in Duluth, and it's a national conference, it was really cool. And I got to go on a tour of Duluth, like their city parks and like with their city director, and their park and recs director, not their city director, sorry. And it was really interesting, and they just put in like a natural resource management plan for their city, which is just crazy because they have like 10,000 acres of natural areas. And so I talked to him a little bit about that process, and if there was something that we could do at Chaska. But yeah, they're doing great. They have a lot of really good partnerships having their parks, and like doing the parks and like updating their parks, and then also doing like restoration work as well in the area. So it was kind of a cool tour.
You said it was a plan that they had put together?
Yep. Yeah.
Does the public have access to that plan, I assume?
They will have access. I asked for the copy in advance
Yeah,
of
that'd
it
be
being
great.
public, so yeah.
What kind of partnerships are you talking about?
So they've partnered with the DNR, they've partnered with the county, they've partnered, I think they've partnered with a few different like nonprofits and other consulting groups as well. Yeah. But
Cool.
That's awesome.
Danielle?
I know that safety on our trail system is part of the pedestrian bicycle master plan, but I would, implore city staff to really look at some of our trails that are in ravines or in emergency vehicle inaccessible areas because, female runners are getting murdered. And Chaska feels very safe, but I run solo because my dog sucks. And there are some areas where I no longer run with earphones anymore because it's so uncomfortable. And I'm going to sound horrible here, but there are also some homeless encampments in some of our ravine systems. And I'm not saying one is a causation of the other, but it also creates an uncomfortable environment. And so even just looking at like installing safety phones, if that's even an option for some of our major ravine areas. I mean, even just like the Lake Grace Pavilion doesn't have great access for emergency vehicles. And if you as a runner go on a route and you know where your next safety point is, that could be enough to save somebody's life. So I would implore the city staff to look at safety as a #1 priority in some of our inaccessible areas.
Good point.
It's not a good update, but.
Well, that's great.
I would second that.
Feedback.
I don't have the words to describe how awful I feel not being out on our little road trip last month, because I was in Montana. Wonderful, lovely parks and rec system out in Montana. But I was saddened I was not here for last month's little expedition, but I trust everyone had fun without me. Recently, I've had a chance to go. I have a daughter who's doing something at the Eden Prairie Community Center right now, so I've had a chance to go through their facility recently. Really interesting looking at other facilities and doing sort of like a compare and contrast with ours, and also softball complexes. Like
I was just down in Prior Lake this last weekend. I've been down in Shakopee the last couple weekends as well, going to softball games, and it's been really interesting, again, compare and contrast with what other communities are doing compared to ours. But getting lots of great ideas, but I won't share them all here right now because it's getting late, so I'm going to pass it over to my friend Dave here, so thank you.
I'll pass it along to you.
Nothing from me this week, David, thank you.
Liz?
So I have a comment or question or something, but town course and league play. I think in the last year, a lot of local courses like Deer Run have closed down their league play. And so that has forced a lot of people who want to enjoy league play to come to the town course. That's a great problem for the town course to have. But then that is such a beautiful facility that is, open to the public, and then I feel like causes a lot of Chaska residents to not be able to get in on league play because there's so many people coming over from these neighboring communities. Again, great problem, but I feel like with it being a public course and so beautiful, if there is some way we could give first right to Chaska residents who pay, to kind of upkeep this, if they can have first right for, I don't know, a week or whatever the, time period is to first sign up for league play and then open it up to neighboring communities, I think that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
I've just heard from lots of people in the community that's been a struggle in the last year. Getting time, tea times in general even, and
Yeah, and Deer Run, I don't believe is gonna put leagues back into play again.
yeah, I don't think so. I don't know what their reasoning there is, but
They have corporate days, and that's where they say they make their money, and so they're in it for the money. Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
yeah, right? But if there's just something we can do to give kind of preferential treatment to the residents of Chaska first, I think that would go a long way.
Okay. Good feedback.
There is a,
Just a reminder for everybody, that, like, the golf course operations aren't under my purview. So I will share the feedback with the golf course
John Kelly.
director. I think it's good feedback.
there is a
for
difference
him
in
to
the
consider.
rate for citizens versus non-citizens, is there not?
There is, but
Yep.
I feel like everyone who goes there gets the Chaska rate. I mean, I don't want to say that because I'm sure that's not necessarily true. I just did say that, sorry.
The non-resident rate once as a resident, so.
I play league there, and my partner's from Victoria, and she pays the same as I do.
Whoa,
The last time I went there, I did pay, to, obviously I paid to play, but then I was like, like, I'm a resident. And they were like, well, we already gave you the resident rate. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, you didn't even ask for,
Recognize, just look like you're from Chaska.
I must.
Let's be honest, okay?
So, I mean, I'm not here to ask how they, pay for their upkeep and everything. It'd just be nice if the
Georgianne?
residents got preferential treatment.
I'm going to pass, I have nothing relevant.
I have nothing to add.
I don't have anything to add either. Thanks for staying late and staying focused on what we're doing. I think it was a good meeting. It is now 9:13. Oh, we gotta have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, sir.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Commission is adjourned at 9:13.
I don't know, Mary, after I motioned, I just lost track.